Welcome to the podcast, The Hill to Live On. I'm your host, Lynn Hardy, and today our topic is Don't Worry. Worrying can result in mental and physical harm and can affect every aspect of your life, your ability to sleep, your relationships. It can lead to anxiety, depression, and stress, and a whole host of other physical and mental health challenges. The ironic thing with worrying is you're desperately wanting relief. You want that thing or things you are worrying about to be resolved so you can have peace. But excessive worry may actually stifle your ability to find solutions. In Matthew chapter 6, verse 27, Jesus tells us, "Can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life?" Let me repeat that. Can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? We all struggle with worry. It's natural. In fact, I'd worry if we never worried. If you think about it, worrying is usually a reaction to something that causes some level of concern. For example, if you find out a friend is in the hospital, a feeling of worry comes naturally as you may be concerned whether they'll be okay. Or if you play an instrument or need to speak in front of people, or maybe have an exam coming up, you may feel a sense of worry and anxiety about doing well. Generally, this type of worry is natural and expected. This type of worry and passing anxiety may not necessarily be a bad thing if it prompts us to act. If it prompts us to visit that friend in the hospital and offer support. If it motivates us to prepare for performing or speaking in public. And if it prompts us to make sure we are prepared for that exam. The real problem is when we start allowing the worry to take over us, going to a heightened anxiety, we become stuck. Our minds go into overdrive, thinking about all the what ifs. Our body and mind more move into almost a fight or flight scenario where if we don't get stuck, we react out of some sort of survival mode. Think about how that helps any situation. It doesn't. Now, don't get me wrong, I struggle with this myself. People that have known me over the decades have probably seen me freeze up in front of people in the past. Even today, worry continues to be something I have to continue to work on. But as I remind myself of Jesus' words, can any one of you by worrying add a single hour to your life? My worry and anxiety start to dissipate. And especially as I put my energy into something positive, worry further subsides. Worry essentially is mental distress, feeling anxiety and fear. Psalm 27 starts off with, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid?" In Isaiah chapter 41, verse 10, God tells us, "Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God." We should not allow fear to take over us because God is with us. What I believe is behind our worrying fundamentally is fear. Our mind goes through all the what if scenarios because we are afraid of the outcome. And our minds, perhaps as a way to try and preemptively prepare, runs through all the bad things that could happen. When I would freeze in front of people, my fear was that I'd mess up. Maybe I'd trip walking up the steps to speak or play my instrument. I'd play the wrong note or out of tune or say the wrong thing and maybe get laughed at. It was as if I was living in the negative consequences before anything actually happened. And when I allowed the worry and anxiety to overcome me, it actually was more likely I didn't do as well as I should have because I was less focused on accomplishing the task at hand than I was on the phantom what if scenarios running through my head. It's one thing to get some butterflies in your stomach, but it's another to allow what are negative fantasies becoming reality in our mind. The other piece of this is that when we allow worrying to take over, not only does it affect our physical and mental health, but it also impacts our relationships with other people. Depending on the situation and what we are worrying about, when we get overly anxious about something, we can cause a ripple effect, making others around us anxious. We may also lash out at people around us, perhaps feeling they aren't doing enough to help the situation. Imagine if you're working on a project at work with coworkers. Maybe you're the team lead. What happens if you get overwhelmed with worrying and fear? It spreads, impacting everybody's performance. And the ironic thing is, the negative consequences are more likely to happen as a result. Spiritually, it may pull us away from our connection with God because in our worry and fear, we are forgetting to trust God. Psalm 56, verses 3 to 4 says, "When I am afraid, I put my trust in you. In God, whose word I praise, in God I trust. I shall not be afraid. What can flesh do to me?" And in Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11, God tells us that He knows the plans He has for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. God calls us to trust Him, trust that He has you. He watches over you and knows what is right and good for our lives. We are told in Hebrews chapter 13, verse 5, that God will never leave us or forsake us. When we get caught up in the what ifs, what if this happens or that, we move away from trusting God. What I finally started to have to accept in response to the what ifs is buying into the so whats. Now, I am not meaning to be callous here, as I am not intending to make light of sometimes very serious situations. But the point is the need to focus on the here and now. We can't be concerned in the now about the what ifs of tomorrow. What we can do is take action on what we can do today. If I'm nervous about speaking in front of people, today I can prepare and practice. And if the what ifs start taking over, like I think about, well, will I stumble? Will I make a mistake? So what? So what if I do? As long as I focus on preparing and doing my best, I know God is with me. And if I stumble, so what? I stumble. And I know and trust God will be with me and pick me up and help me move on. Does that mean we don't plan ahead or anticipate issues or problems? No. There is a difference between making plans or taking into account different possibilities as you deal with a situation or prepare for something versus getting fixated and overwhelmed by fear that causes you to get stuck. Now, I'm not talking about strategic planning and preparation. I am talking about when your mind spirals into the what if scenarios that only cycle back into feeding back into your worry and fear. Think about this. When we get overwhelmed by worry, fear, and anxiety, the what ifs are usually all negative. It's beyond just planning for different scenarios, it's allowing the negative to dominate and influence what we do now, even when those negatives may have very little basis in reality or even probability. And even if any of those scenarios were to happen, we forget God will be with us. So, how do we not get stuck in the worry? First and foremost, know God is with you. He loves you. Trust in Him. One thing you can do that helps me is take some time to reflect on what God has already done for you. During very trying times in my life, in those moments, I didn't understand why certain things happened. When I reflect back on those times now, I see more clearly that God was there. I may not have recognized it at the time, but now I'm actually amazed. For example, when my mother was battling breast cancer, support and help came from unexpected places. My sister and I managed and planned the best we could, juggling our jobs and other responsibilities. But there were so many times we didn't know how we were going to manage all we needed to care for her. And all along the way, people and other help would come from seemingly nowhere, from unexpected places and people. It was God. There are many of these situations where, in hindsight, I look back and wonder, how did I make it through? How did I make it through what seemed like impossible situations? And then, upon reflecting, seeing the blessings that materialized right on time. I say this to say, reflect. See the blessings even in the difficult times. How does this help? It helps to deepen and grow your trust in God. When you see what He has done, you know what He can and will do. Your spirit is comforted, and you gain confidence knowing that God is your rock. You'll be reminded, as in Psalm 23 says, "The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing." It goes on to say, "Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me." Now, this doesn't mean bad things won't happen in our lives. What it does mean is God is with us and will give us the strength and help we need. With this knowledge, it helps us to press forward. It reminds us when the what ifs swirl in our head. It's not so what, but rather, but God will be with me. So I said, so what earlier, but it's really, but God will be with me. That should be your response to the what ifs. Second, be aware of when you're worrying, anxious, or fearful, and step back and pray, but don't get stuck. Now, let me be clear here as a side note. I'm not talking about very real situations where you get some indication or gut feeling or other red flags that something is not right in a situation and may actually be unsafe. Actually listen to that voice telling you something may be wrong. But even in that scenario, you don't want to get stuck. You do still need to take action, even if it's changing your mind about a situation or removing yourself from that type of situation. Praying recenters you and reconnects you with God. Matthew chapter 6, verse 33 tells us to seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Ask God to strengthen you, be with you, remove the what ifs and worry that are swirling in your head, and ask God to guide you in the way that you should go. Third, focus on the moment. Sometimes we are called to do something or find ourselves in a situation to work through where the process and journey itself is what is critical, regardless of the outcome. Maybe it's to prepare us for something. Maybe it's to teach us. Maybe it's just because of the value of the experience. Sometimes worry can so consume us, focusing on the possible outcomes, that we miss the blessings in the journey. Maybe it's the moments of connection with other people we should cherish. Maybe it's a journey in which we grow stronger spiritually, mentally, and physically. Taking in the journey refocuses our mind away from the what ifs and allows us to be open to what we may receive from the actual experience or journey. It also focuses us on the preparation if we are working towards a goal so that we have the best chance to succeed. And even if we don't, we know God is there. We still will feel a sense of accomplishment and confidence because we will know we focused on preparing, and we have a clearer insight if we want to try to do it again, what we may need to do next time. We've learned from the experience. Take note when all of those what ifs don't actually materialize. Instead of fixating on the negative what ifs, counter them with positive what ifs. As you go through life and you see more and more positive outcomes, the negative what ifs will start to melt away. So, bottom line is reflect on the blessings, pray for direction, trust God, be aware of when worry comes, and don't get stuck, but take action. Focus on the moment and the journey and what you can get out of that and learn from that, and claim the positive. If the Lord is your light and your salvation, whom will you fear? If God is your strength, of whom will you be afraid? Jesus tells us not to worry. Being consumed with worry holds no value. If anything, it holds us back. It stifles us. This week, think about how you can address worry and anxiety and fear you may feel. I provided some of my thoughts on what may help, but as I always say, don't take my word for it or anybody else's. Your relationship with God is a personal one. What steps can you take to reduce the worry in your life and prevent it from getting you stuck? I'm Lynn Hardy, and thank you for joining this episode of The Hill to Live On. I hope you have a blessed and wonderful week.